old money." A scream tore through the silence in the lobby of Harbor and Smith Inc. Bank. Marble floors so polished you could use them as mirrors. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's cars. And receptionists who looked like they'd been hired from a modeling agency. It was the kind of place where even the air felt expensive, and everyone knew their place in the hierarchy. At 8:47 a.m. on a freezing February morning, the glass doors swung open and in walked James Carter. Hoodie zipped up, worn jeans, sneakers that had stories to tell, and a calm confidence that somehow made him invisible to everyone around him. To the suits in that lobby, he might as well have been carrying a mop bucket. The receptionist didn't even look up from her screen. "Delivery?" she asked, her voice carrying that special kind of politeness reserved for people she considered beneath her pay grade. James smiled, not the fake corporate smile everyone else wore, but something genuine. "No delivery. I'm here to go up to the executive floor." Now that got her attention. She looked at his hoodie, then his face, then back at the hoodie, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I'll wait." Cue the music, because this is where it gets good. Security approached like they were dealing with a trespasser at a 5-star hotel. The taller guard, muscles bulging under his uniform, delivered his lines with practiced authority. "Sir, delivery entrance is on the side. This lobby is for clients and executive access only." James stayed calm. "I'm not delivering anything. I'm visiting." "Name?" "James Carter." The receptionist typed frantically, frowning at her screen like it had personally offended her. "You're not in our system." "I didn't make an appointment." And here's where our story takes its first delicious turn. The guard's tone sharpened to a knife's edge. "Then I'm going to have to ask you to step outside until you're cleared." James reached into his hoodie pocket, not for ID, but for his phone. He backed toward a bench and said those legendary words that would later become a TikTok sound. "I'll just wait here. I have some time." What they didn't know, what nobody in that pristine lobby knew, was that James Carter wasn't just any visitor. He was the new owner of the entire company. His holding company, Valor Holdings, had closed the acquisition just 6 days earlier. But unlike other billionaires who announced their purchases with champagne and press conferences, James preferred the element of surprise. He wanted to see the truth before the cleanup crew arrived. And what he saw was already telling a story that would make your blood boil. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This story gets crazy. After 10 minutes of awkward staring, the elevator chimed and out stepped the man who would become the villain of our story, Greg Langford, COO, Harvard graduate, and walking stereotype of corporate arrogance. Picture your worst boss, multiply by 10, and add a suit that probably cost more than your rent. Greg walked past James like he was furniture, until the receptionist called out, "Mr. Langford, there's someone in the lobby asking to go up. Says his name is James Carter." Greg turned, squinted at James like he was trying to identify a strange insect, and then delivered his line with the kind of condescending charm that makes you want to throw something at the screen. "Ah, you must be lost. We don't do walk-ins on the executive level." James stood slowly. "I'm not lost." Greg's smile became sharper than a blade. "You sure you're in the right building?" "I'm exactly where I need to be." But Greg had already mentally filed James under problem to be solved. His tone dropped to ice-cold corporate speak. "Well, we're running a tight schedule today. Let's not waste executive time." James didn't budge. "I'll wait." Greg gave him one last look, the kind of look that said, "You don't belong here and we both know it," then walked away, pausing only to whisper to the receptionist, "Flag security if he lingers too long." James sat back down, pulled out his phone, and smiled to himself. This was going to be very interesting. Comment below if you've ever been judged by your appearance. This hits different when you realize what's coming. Over the next few days, James Carter became the corporate world's greatest undercover investigator. He didn't storm in demanding respect. He watched, he listened, and he documented everything. What he discovered behind those polished glass walls was worse than simple arrogance. It was a system designed to keep people like him on the outside. He watched how black employees were cut off in meetings, with phrases like, "Let's keep it tight," or were moving past that. He saw how women's ideas were only validated when repeated by men in expensive suits. He observed how the company's most praised projects seemed to revolve around one insular circle, white, male, and led by Greg Langford. But then he met Monica. Monica Ree was everything the company claimed to value but consistently overlooked. Brilliant logistics analyst. Early 30s, with natural curls, she kept professionally styled and notebooks filled with ideas that could revolutionize their operations. She moved through the office with quiet confidence, speaking with precision when she got the chance. James first heard her speak in a strategy meeting he'd slipped into using a borrowed name badge. Monica broke down a shipping bottleneck with such efficiency it made James lean forward in his seat. This woman was good. But as she wrapped up her presentation, Manager Todd chimed in with the corporate death sentence. "Let's circle back to this later. There's probably a simpler fix." Monica didn't argue. She just nodded and let the room move on without her. This is where it gets personal, y'all. Later that day, James found Monica in the break room, pouring coffee that looked like it had been sitting there since the Clinton administration. "Hey, I heard your logistics model this morning. It was sharp." She turned, surprised. "You were in there?" "Yeah, back corner. They called me Jacob. Long story." She laughed, the first genuine laugh he'd heard in that building. "Thanks. Not sure it mattered?" "It mattered. Why'd they shoot it down?" Monica's answer hit like a punch to the gut. "Because it wasn't their idea, and because I don't look like I belong in the room that makes the decisions." James studied her tired but undefeated expression. "How long you been here?" 5 years? I've trained 3 guys who are now my boss, but you probably figured that out already." The pattern was becoming crystal clear. James smiled, but his eyes stayed serious. "Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern." Monica looked at him curiously. "You don't work in operations, do you?" "Nope." "What's your real job then?" James chose his words carefully. "The kind where I get to see who shows up when they think no one's watching." Monica stared at him for a beat too long, then offered a knowing smile. "Well, watch carefully. This place has layers." Smash that like button if Monica deserves better. Trust me, she gets it. As James left the break room, he glanced at the bulletin board. A flyer for the Leadership Advancement Program hung there proudly, featuring 10 faces, all white, all male, with Greg Langford's arms around 2 of them like he was handing out Olympic medals. The message was clear. Success had a very specific look at Harbor and Smith. James pulled out his phone and typed, "Observed pattern of silencing non-white staff. Potential culture audit needed. Track Monica's project outcome. My-FD-W-05-0." But Greg Langford wasn't stupid. Something about the hoodie guy had been bothering him for days. It wasn't just that James kept showing up. It was how he showed up, moving through the building like he owned it, asking questions that were too precise, watching things he shouldn't have known existed. So Greg did what paranoid executives do. He called IT. Here's where our story takes a dark turn. "Greg, we ran that access scan you requested," came the voice of Charles Donnelly, head of IT. "Your guy in the hoodie, he's been poking around." Greg leaned forward, gripping his pen like a weapon. Define poking. Accessed internal personnel files, logistics chain audits, old shareholder data from the acquisition folder. He's not just browsing, he knows where to look. Greg's stomach dropped. "Is he still in the system?" "Not under that ID, but our logs show he's using elevated permissions tied to an unregistered administrator account." Greg stood up, pacing. "Pull the logs, print everything, and flag HR. We might have a breach." But Greg wasn't just covering his bases, he was preparing for war. And Monica was about to become collateral damage. The next morning, Monica walked into work to find her name mysteriously missing from a recurring operations meeting she'd attended for years. Confused, she went to HR, where she was met by a nervous-looking rep named Kelsey. "Monica, I'm going to need you to step aside for a quick compliance chat." "A compliance chat?" Kelsey's voice dropped to a whisper. "Greg Langford filed a concern yesterday, Said you've been sharing internal data with someone unauthorized. Monica felt the world tilt. Excuse me? Hidden give names, but we've been asked to audit your communications, email, messages, desk access. That afternoon, Monica found James by the vending machine, reading an expense report on his phone. Her voice was tight, with barely controlled fury. You might have just cost me my job. James looked up slowly. What happened? Langford flagged me, said I leaked files. HR pulled me into a side room like I was smuggling state secrets. James's jaw tensed. You didn't leak anything. Doesn't matter. Perception's enough. And now I'm being treated like a criminal. I'll fix it. Monica laughed bitterly. Fix it? You haven't even told me who you are. James paused, then said carefully, I'm someone who came here to change this place. She stared at him, reading something deeper in his tone. Regret, perhaps? Or the weight of a truth he wasn't ready to reveal. Well, if you're going to change anything, do it fast. Before she left, she whispered, whatever this is, whoever you are, they know you're not supposed to be here. Comment, justice for Monica if you're as mad as I am right now. That night, James sat in his hotel room, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He drafted a message to his team. Langford suspect. HR was mobilized today. Temporary setback for Monica. Proceed with caution. Recommend soft reveal within 48 hours. Audit team on standby. He stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. They'd fired the first shot, but he wasn't done watching. He was done waiting. Monday morning brought the moment we'd all been waiting for. James Carter wasn't at the front desk anymore. He wasn't watching from a bench. He was walking across that marble lobby in a tailored navy suit, flanked by two senior partners from Valor Holdings. The receptionist who'd once dismissed him dropped her pen. The security guard who'd tried to escort him out now stood straighter, unsure whether to speak. James didn't need the recognition. He scanned his badge, the one bearing official owner access, and the elevator doors opened with a satisfying chime. Upstairs, the quarterly shareholders meeting was in full swing. Greg Langford stood at the front, giving his usual confident presentation about agile restructuring and streamlining inefficiencies. His voice filled the room with corporate buzzwords and empty promises. Then the door opened. Heads turned. Greg's sentence died mid-syllable. James entered with calm deliberation, nodded politely to the room, and pulled out the empty chair at the head of the table, the one Greg had been occupying moments earlier. He said. Greg's smile returned too quickly, too tightly. Ah, Mr. Carter, what a surprise. James gave him a level look. I believe it's time for introductions. The lead partner from Valor Holdings cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to formally introduce James Carter, majority stakeholder in Harbor & Smith and effective owner as of the close of acquisition 2 weeks ago. Chef's kiss, the drama. Murmurs rolled through the room like an earthquake. James continued, voice steady as a rock. I appreciate you keeping the lights on while I took a few days to get a closer look at things. Greg forced a laugh. Well, you certainly did that. James leaned back, completely in control. You treated me like I didn't belong. I wanted to see if it was personal or policy. Uncomfortable silence settled over the room like a blanket. James didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. In the time I spent walking these halls, I watched how decisions are made, who gets heard and who gets erased. The patterns were clear. A compliance officer at the far end of the table shifted nervously. James continued, I'm not here for drama. I'm here for change. And I'd prefer not to clean house if I don't have to. But let me be clear. The culture at this company will shift. Or the leadership will. Greg cleared his throat, forcing fake friendliness. Of course, we're eager to align with your vision. James looked at him and said nothing. The silence was deafening. Pause to appreciate the absolute power of this moment. When the meeting ended, Greg caught up with James by the elevators. Look, I didn't know who you were. You caught us off guard. No, James said evenly. I caught you as you are. Greg's mouth opened, but James cut him off. I'm not here to embarrass you, Greg. I'm here to build something better. But if you stand in the way of that, I'll have no problem removing the obstacles." The elevator dinged. James stepped inside, turned slightly, and delivered the line that would become a viral sensation. "This wasn't a surprise, Greg. It was a test." The doors slid shut, leaving Greg standing alone, the first bead of sweat sliding down his neck. But Greg Langford wasn't going down without a fight. Behind closed doors, he was plotting with his longtime ally, Gavin Blake, a board member with salt and pepper hair and the kind of casual arrogance that comes from decades of unchecked privilege. "He's going to gut us," Greg said, staring out his office window. Gavin smirked. "So what's your move?" "We stall, delay every initiative he launches, redirect reports, scrub the financials, make it look like he's hemorrhaging resources. And then we leak a narrative, one that questions his legitimacy, his judgment, paint him as erratic, inexperienced, maybe even compromised." Greg opened a folder filled with doctored documents, project notes, backdated emails, out-of-context messages. "When it erupts, we push for a vote of no confidence." Gavin whistled low. "You've been busy. You don't survive this long by waiting to be replaced. And here's the beautiful part. We spin his relationship with Monica as favoritism. Say he's compromised professional boundaries." They shook hands on their plan, not knowing they were about to face an opponent who'd been 3 steps ahead from the very beginning. This is where you need to pay attention, because the plot twist is insane. The storm didn't arrive with thunder, it came with whispers. Suddenly, Monica's projects were being reevaluated. Her name disappeared from meeting agendas. People started talking about James and Monica in hushed tones, implying something inappropriate. Then came the doctored financial reports. Greg presented logistics data that looked legitimate but was subtly wrong. Forecasts inflated, deadlines padded, expenses shifted. When James questioned the numbers, Greg delivered his poisoned dagger. "We just plugged in revised inputs based on Monica's earlier reports." Monica stiffened. "I didn't approve these numbers." Greg tilted his head with fake confusion. "Really? That's odd. IT found some flagged spreadsheets under your profile last night, last edits traced to your login." The frame job was elegant and vicious. Monica was hauled into HR, accused of manipulating financial data. Meanwhile, the Chicago Ledger ran a headline that made James's blood boil. "New owner, accused of ethics breach at Harbor and Smith." Alleged header, Skyline Museum, picture, Russell. The photo showed James in his hoodie from weeks earlier, with a caption that read, "Carter's mysterious undercover entrance raises red flags as favoritism inquiry unfolds." By Wednesday, James was suspended from all day-to-day decisions pending investigation. Reporters swarmed the building. Monica was quietly moved to a basement cubicle between 2 filing cabinets. As James left the building under flashing cameras, he didn't raise his hand or speak. He simply looked up at the same lobby ceiling where they'd once told him to use the side door. They'd pushed him out for now, but the fight was far from over. That night, James sat in a private apartment overlooking the river, surrounded by screens and the quiet hum of his legal team. Every file Greg had touched, every meeting Gavin had chaired, every message HR had flagged, all of it was being pulled, logged, and cataloged. "How much longer?" he asked his lead investigator, Evelyn Chun. "Not long," she said, sliding over a hard drive. "We've confirmed doctored logs, backdated communications, proof Monica's data was altered post-lawn. Greg's fingerprints are all over it." James stared at the screen showing his own face in that lobby hoodie. "They thought that version of me was the easiest one to destroy. So what now?" James stood, straightened his jacket, and spoke with quiet resolve. "Now we wait." "Wait for what?" "For the right room, the right moment, and the right silence to break. The comeback is about to be legendary." For 12 days, James Carter disappeared from public view. No statements, no interviews, no damage control, just silence. And in a world addicted to noise, that silence was deafening. Inside Harbor and Smith, Greg began walking with his old swagger again. He hosted board meetings, dropped buzzwords like stability and reputation management, and and smiled when reporters quoted him as the steady hand guiding the company through turbulence. But Greg couldn't shake the feeling that the silence was too intentional. Meanwhile, Monica was living the fallout, stripped of her title, relegated to data entry, receiving the kind of glances that made her question her own worth. Then one morning, she found a manila envelope on her desk. Inside were printouts, Slack logs, timestamp audits, metadata trails showing exactly when and how her financial model had been altered. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, "You were never alone. J.C." That afternoon, Monica met James in a rented co-working space overlooking the river. He sat at a laptop, dressed in dark jeans and a plain sweater, calm as ever. "I thought you were gone," Monica said. "I was quiet," James replied. "There's a difference. Way now. Why not fight back weeks ago?" James looked at her steadily. "Because if I'd responded then, it would have been emotional, defensive. They were expecting that." He turned the laptop toward her, revealing an organized evidence dashboard. Greg's internal memos, Gavin's call logs, financial anomalies, HR manipulations. All tied together with timestamps and witness statements. "They weaponize perception," James said. "I'm about to weaponize the truth." Monica stared at the screen. "This is war." "No," James said quietly. "This is a reckoning." He smiled for the first time in days. "You've been building this in the dark? You don't win by shouting louder than your enemies. You win by making sure everyone hears what they've been trying to hide. And here comes the plot twist that nobody saw coming." James opened a black case containing a remote clicker, a presentation drive, and an invitation to Harbour and Smith's quarterly shareholder conference. His team then removed the case, bared up his drive, and set him free. "I'm not going back to clear my name," he said. "I'm going back to reset the standard." Monica looked at the evidence in her hands. "You think they'll listen?" James met her eyes. "They won't have a choice." The grand ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Investors, media, board members all gathered for what they thought was just another quarterly review. Greg stood confidently near the front, exchanging pleasantries, his voice carrying its usual polished confidence. "You're seeing the situation nobly grudging." "You're sure he's not showing up?" Gavin muttered. Greg smirked. He had his moment. It's over. The lights dimmed. Greg stepped to the microphone and began with his rehearsed charm. "In the last few months, Harbour and Smith has experienced transition, recalibration, and renewal. But through it all, we've upheld our integrity." He didn't get to finish. A voice rang out from the back of the ballroom. "Except that's not true. And it's time everyone in this room saw what actually happened." Heads turned. Greg's face went white. James Carter stood in the aisle, walking forward in a charcoal suit, calm and certain. Monica followed, carrying a remote and a folder marked Exhibit A. James reached the stage, looked Greg in the eye, then turned to the crowd. "My name is James Carter. I'm the majority stakeholder of Harbour and Smith, and what you've been told these past weeks has been a carefully crafted lie." The screen behind them flickered to life, not with graphs or forecasts, but with emails, messages, audit logs, all time-stamped, all irrefutable. "This," James said, pointing, "is an internal memo from Greg Langford discussing how to manipulate board votes and delay culture reform." Click. "This is metadata showing Monica's reports were edited after she logged off, then used to accuse her of fraud." Click. "And this," James said with growing force, "is surveillance footage of Greg mocking my appearance, calling me a hoodie-wearing clown while planning to push me out through fabricated ethics claims." A video played. Greg's voice rang clearly over the speakers. "Let him think he's in charge. He's just a dressed-up delivery guy with a bank account." Silence swept the ballroom like a wave. James let it settle before speaking again, his voice softer now. "They didn't just try to embarrass me. They tried to erase people like Monica. People who show up every day and give everything, only to be silenced by a ceiling no one admits exists." He turned to Greg, meeting him eye to eye. "You didn't fear me, Greg. You feared what I represented. Accountability. Greg stammered. You manipulated your way in. I walked in through the same front door you said wasn't mine. James turned back to the crowd. I didn't come here for applause. I came for honesty. And I think it's time we rebuild this company the right way. Monica stepped forward, handing physical files to the board. This is the complete report. Everything's been verified by an independent third-party firm. One by one, board members looked toward Greg, not with loyalty, but with cold recognition. He was exposed. Justice is served. The silence after the presentation was heavy, the kind that settles like judgment. Chairwoman Ruth Ellis, a woman with decades of boardroom experience and zero patience for embarrassment, slowly stood. Mr. Langford, please step away from the microphone. Greg opened his mouth to protest. Now, she added with finality. Ruth addressed the board. Based on the evidence presented, I motion for immediate termination of Mr. Langford's employment pending legal review. Unanimous. Security approached. Greg looked at James with quiet hatred. You think you've won? James replied almost gently. No, Greg. I think the company just stopped losing. And that is how you deliver justice. But wait, there's more. Because James Carter had been playing a longer game than anyone realized. At the company's investor appreciation dinner, James took the stage for what everyone thought was a victory lap. But he had one more revelation that would blow everyone's minds. Tonight we celebrate growth, he began, but I'd like to tell you something most of you don't know. Something I've kept close, not to deceive, but to protect the lesson that had to come before it. The room went silent. I didn't just stumble across Harper & Smith in a portfolio spreadsheet. I didn't choose this company by accident. He paused, letting the tension build. I chose it because I knew who Greg Langford was long before he ever saw me. I knew his hiring patterns, his closed-door meetings, the promotions he blocked. Whispers rippled across the room. But here's the part no one expects. Greg's former ally, Gavin Blake, was once married to my cousin. That's how I knew where the cracks lived, long before I ever signed the acquisition papers. The room erupted in gasps. James continued, I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came to expose what was already rotting, to show that merit can't thrive in shadows, that real power doesn't need a title or corner office. It needs integrity. He looked toward Monica, who stood amazed near the side of the room. And to those who ask why I didn't announce myself sooner, the moment I walked in as a man in a hoodie, they showed me everything I needed to know. This time, applause rose not in waves, but in a single powerful surge. I am living for this energy. 6 months later, Harper & Smith looked the same from the outside. Same sharp lines of glass and steel, same bustling lobby, but inside, everything had changed. Monica now sat in a corner office with a view, her title reading, Director of Strategic Innovation. The Leadership Advancement Program flyer had been replaced with photos showing faces of every color, gender, and background. James had kept his word, not just about justice, but about building something better. Greg Langford had quietly disappeared, some said to Florida, others to a law firm downtown. But the real victory wasn't his absence. It was the presence of voices that had been silenced for too long. The company's reputation had rebounded, not through spin, but through integrity. Employees flooded James's inbox with gratitude. Investors praised his restraint and vision. And Monica? She became the face of the company's transformation, proving that talent doesn't come with a dress code or a pedigree. It comes with persistence, brilliance, and the courage to speak truth to power. If this story doesn't make you believe in justice, I don't know what will. The final scene takes place on the company's rooftop deck, the city skyline stretching out behind them. Monica found James there, looking out across the city. Why didn't you fight back sooner? She asked. James took a moment, the wind picking up around them. Because they were expecting noise. But truth doesn't have to yell to be heard. It just has to arrive when the world's finally ready to listen. Monica smiled. Well, they heard you. This wasn't just about me, James said. It was about every person who walked through those doors and was told, verbally or silently, they weren't enough. He turned to her. From now on, they'll know that dignity walks in wearing anything, even a hoodie. Monica laughed through her tears. You know they're going to put that on a plaque, right? James chuckled. Let them. Just make sure your name's on it, too. And that is how you change the world. This story isn't just about one man's journey from outsider to owner. It's about the power of perception, the danger of assumptions, and the incredible strength that comes from staying true to yourself, even when the world tries to make you small. James Carter could have walked into that lobby in a $1,000 suit and commanded immediate respect. Instead, he chose to see how they treated someone they thought didn't matter, and in doing so, he revealed the true character of everyone around him. Monica could have stayed quiet, kept her head down, accepted the limitations others placed on her. Instead, she chose to speak up, even when it cost her everything. Together, they proved that real power isn't about the clothes you wear or the office you occupy. It's about the courage to stand up for what's right, even when you're standing alone. Smash that subscribe button if you believe in justice. Drop A if this story gave you chills. Comment. Hoodie. CEO if you're ready to see more stories like this. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone underestimated. Sometimes justice comes wearing a hoodie. And sometimes the quiet ones are the ones changing the world. What would you do if you were in James's position? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to ring that notification bell. You never know when the next incredible story will drop. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight, and remember, never judge a book by its cover. You never know who might be writing the next chapter.